Welcome to this video. I am your usual presenter, Felix Kunda, and in today's video we are looking at news determinants. What determines news in journalism? Now, there are what we call yardsticks that measure the value of news. Identifying and measuring these values is called news sense. So what we post or what we write as journalists, it should fall in one of the categories. So the first one is called impact. So most news stories are about events that have an impact on many people, events that are likely to affect many people. Now what we are saying here is, for you as a journalist, when you have the information, so that information to be called news, it must have an impact on the people that are going to read that news. So we are also saying the more people that are affected by the event, the bigger the story. Journalists ask, how many people does the event affect? So when deciding what you are going to write, whether this is news or not, you will look at the impact. So for instance, if in a community the government puts up a clinic, and in that clinic, if it is able to serve 2,000 people, then that information is a story because it affects about 2,000 people. But in a situation where they've put up a clinic and it's only looking, or it's only serving up to 2 persons, then that is not a good story because it has no impact at all. So that is the first news determinant. So the second one is what we call proximity. Now proximity, this refers to events that are geographically or emotionally close to the people. So if an event is closer to the people, then that becomes news because people are interested to know what is happening around them. So for you as a journalist, you'll be able to pick that, and that will be considered as news. So they're saying an event will be more important if it is closer to the readers, viewers, or listeners. So people are always interested in events they can be identified with. So when deciding what is going to be news, first of all, you need to decide whether it is closer to the people or it is not. So they are also saying emotional closeness refers to people being interested in events and individuals that seem close to them, either by religion, ethnic, or racial ties. So sometimes there's what we call localizing the story. So the story might have happened elsewhere, but you can localize it by perhaps interviewing a local person who is going to comment on what would have happened elsewhere. So that is the second, which we call proximity. The next one is what we call prominency. Now prominency, these are events involving well-known people and institutions. So names make news even when the event is of little consequence. So ordinary people are interested to know what the rich and famous are doing. So for you as a journalist, whatever an important person does, that becomes news, because by that person being important, whatever he does, whatever she does, becomes news. Then there's also what we call timeliness. So now timeliness, this refers to events that are immediate or recent. So something is more newsworthy if it is reported at the time of occurrence. So basically what we're saying is, for the information that you have to be called news, it should be timely. So imagine if something happened perhaps 2 weeks ago, and this is the time when you want to report it, then that is not going to be news because it has become stale. So in journalism, whatever we see on television, whatever we hear on radio, it is something that is timely, something that would have happened at that same specific time. Then we also have what we call the unusual. So the unusual, these are events that deviate sharply from the expected, that depart considerably from the experiences of everyday life, and that make news. Now here in Zambia, I want to give you an example of what we are referring to. We had a child who had 30 needles in her body, and of course we didn't know how that happened. So that becomes news because it is bizarre. In fact, in our journalism, we call, if a man bites a dog, then that is news. But if it is a dog that bites a man, it is not news at all, because we all know that dogs bite people that disturb it. Okay? Then we are also saying the interruption in the expected, the difference makes news. So something that is unusual becomes news. So if something makes a reporter stop and stare, wonder, exclaim, then the reporter knows that what he or she is looking at is newsworthy. So basically for journalists, they do have what we call an intuition to be able to identify what is news in everything that they are going to see. So there is also what we call conflict. So when there's a conflict, then that makes news. So we are saying actual conflicts and even the danger of conflicts make news as they tend to bring about major changes. So this can be physical clashes or conflict of ideas. So whether people are fighting or perhaps people are exchanging their philosophies or their ideologies, then that still becomes news. Then we also have what we call disaster. So be it a result of natural calamity like an earthquake or a volcano, all that makes news because people are interested to know what would have happened at that place. Then the last one is what we call human interest. So stories of people coping with various situations in life make interesting reading. So reports of a vendor lifestyle, perhaps even a sex worker. So as a journalist, you can go and capture a sexual worker doing her business, assuming she's going to allow you to watch. So if you watch her and then you bring that, it is what we call human interest because people are interested to know how the commercial sex workers are able to capture their clients and how they are charged or how much money they make per day. So that becomes what we call a story, but that falls in the human interest category. And I remember I saw a story which was written by a reporter. A reporter found people catching caterpillars. In our language we call them vinkubala, and she followed the women cutting trees. She also followed the women catching caterpillars, and she followed the women cooking caterpillars, and she eventually saw them eating. So that became a story, but it is in the human interest story. So that's it about news determinants for today. Please don't forget to like it and also to subscribe. I'm your usual presenter, Felix Kunda. See you next time.